Today, I want to show you 3 very useful tips in Adobe InDesign that will help take your digital publishing projects to another level. In this lesson, learn how to add interaction using universal scrolling frames, set up an interactive menu to profile images, and create a custom motion path animation to a slider menu that opens and closes. I'll also go over how to publish the project online and view it in a web browser. So let's jump right into this lesson and start creating. Alright, I have the InDesign document open here, which you can find a link to in the description below. I am working on an A4 page size meant for web. And the first tip that I want to show you here is how to create a swipe and scroll interaction. And for this, we'll need the universal scrolling frames panel. You can find a link to that also in the description below. And you'll have to download that from the Ajar Productions In5 website. Just sign up for their newsletter and they'll in turn send you the download for this panel. And it's very useful, and I'm going to show you how to use it for this tutorial. Now you can see up top here I have this grouped content. So it's basically 2 panels. And if I just click it, I'm going to hold my shift key and just kind of move it over. And you can see that we have 2 panels that fit the entire width of the page. I'm just going to hit Command Z. Now, it's important to have everything grouped, and in the template, it will be. So what we want to do here is go up to Window and Universal Scrolling Frames. Now, once you download this, you'll see it in that window dropdown. So you'll have to download it first. So I'm just going to move that off to the side. Now, we'll have to create a container in which will become the scrolling frame itself. And we'll drop this group content right into that container. And the container is basically just a rectangle frame. So I'm just going to click that. And I'm going to draw out a frame that is the same width, but just a little bit deeper than the actual content there. Okay, so you see, I just have a container. We'll leave that there for now. I'm going to grab the selection tool, click on the grouped content, and just do Command X or Control X. You can also go up to Edit and Cut. Now click on the container itself, right click, and paste into. Not paste, paste into. You can see it'll paste it exactly how you cut it, and so you don't see the other portion, but if I double click, now I can drive into that, and you can see that the grouped content is selected. But let me click on this container once, and then with my Universal Scrolling Frames panel, I get this drop down here for an option of how I want this scroll direction to be. So obviously it's gonna default to off. You can auto detect, but we know this is gonna be a horizontal scroll because I want to swipe or scroll to the right and left. So I'm gonna select horizontal. And the scroll indicators. Do I want the scroll indicators to appear when this is published? Well, I've added this call to action here, swipe scroll. And if you don't want the scroll indicators on, I would suggest putting something like this in so people know that this is an interaction. So I'm going to choose to hide them just because it gives it a little bit of a cleaner look. Now if I go to any interactive panels, in this case I'll just open animation, and I'm gonna click on the preview spread EPUB, and let's have a look. So if I scroll to the right, there's the second panel. If I scroll to the left, there's the original panel. Now, let me show you how it looks with the indicators on, and this is personal preference. I chose to turn them off because I have this little call to action. So I'm gonna uncheck that, and let's have a look now. And you can see you get this bar here. So if you don't have a call to action or some kind of user experience, then I would suggest leaving this on so people know that there's more content to the right and to the left. And by the way, you can add as many panels as you want. You can have this scroll 4, 5, 6 panels. You would just use the same technique of cutting it and pasting it in to that container and then setting up your scroll direction. I'm just going to hit hide again, and we don't need this anymore, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this, and we can move on to the next step. So that's step 1 or tip 1. And the next tip is I'm going to show you how to build out an interactive menu with these profile images, as well as the bios and these close buttons. Now you can see here we have 4 images, we have 4 bio text pieces, as well as 4 X icons, which will become our close buttons. Now we're going to create buttons out of everything, so we'll have 12 altogether, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here just to show you. So we'll start with this first image, and you'll notice that, have a look, I've grouped the name with the image. So that's important. Make sure that those 2 elements are grouped, and in this case it is. If it's not, or if you're starting from scratch on a project like this, then make the text frame and group it with the image. To do that is just go up to Object and Group. In this case, it would be Ungroup because it's grouped, or just do Command G or Control G to group. All right, so I'm gonna open my Buttons and Forms panel. And to access that, just go up to Window, Interactive, and Buttons and Forms. And I'm just gonna leave this here for now. Now we're gonna create this into a button. Go ahead and choose button for the type. And for this, let's call it Helena Greenstein Photo, okay? Let's move on to the second one. We're not adding any actions yet. It's gonna be easier to set all the buttons up and then do all the actions and the interactivity after. So I'm on the second image, button, and this is Anthony Jones Photo. Let's go to the third one, button, and this is Jorge Suarez Photo. Let's click that last one here and go to button, and this is called Lindsay Grant Photo. Great. Let's do the same for the bio pieces here. So I'm on that first text frame, and we'll turn that into a button. And this will be called Helena Greenstein Bio. Click on the second one, button. And this is Anthony Jones button, bio. Click on the third, button. And this is Jorge Suarez bio. And it's easier to just name the buttons and names of the people you're doing here. It just makes it easier to remember as you're working along. And this will be Lindsay Grant bio. All right, we just have the close buttons to do now. So let's click on that first one and convert that to a button. And this is simply just close button 1. Let's click on the second icon here, and this is also a button, and this is close button 2. Let's click on that third close button, and that will be called close button 3. And then the last one is close button 4. Now, one other piece before we move on here is I want to make sure that all of these close buttons, as well as the buttons down below, are hidden until they're triggered. And I'll show you why and what I mean shortly. So let's just select all of these, and you could do them together. There's an option here to hide the buttons until it's triggered, meaning they will not appear until I click a button and then they'll appear. So I'm gonna click that and they're all activated. Let's do the same thing for these buttons down below. Click hidden until triggered. So if I click on each one, you can see that that option now has been activated here, okay? Now I should mention that this technique that I'm showing you here will also work for interactive PDF, as well as publish online and EPUB fixed layout, so viewing it in an e-reader. So let's start with the first image and start adding our actions. Now for this, we'll add the show hide buttons and forms. So I'm gonna click the first one, Helena Greenstein, and click actions. And for this, we want show hide buttons and forms. Now you can see in the visibility here, we have all the buttons we just set up, and they're in the order that we have them. So actually, let me just make sure that that one should be close button 4, okay? And you'll see it'll update in the visibility. I just forgot to add that 4 in there. Okay, so what do we want this to do? When we click this first one, I want the Helena Greenstein photo to be hidden, okay? But I do want the Helena Grainstein bio to show. And I also want that close button 1 to show as well. Now, I want to add a rollover appearance to this. So I'm going to click rollover, and I'm going to double click to drive into the rollover appearance state. So this almost works as like a state, much like object states would work. So I'm going to click that first one. I'm driven into the rollover one. And I just want to make it this blue color that I've set up here in my CC libraries. You'll find the swatch in this template, okay? I'm going to click on the donut or the content grabber, go back to my properties panel here, and in my opacity dropdown, I want to select soft light. And you can see it changed color there, or it blended. It's a blend mode. And if I go back to normal, I have my normal appearance state and my rollover appearance state. Let's click normal, double click that name and just delete it. Okay, you'll see why I did that as we move on here. So I'm going to click on that second image here, Anthony Jones photo, go to actions, show hide buttons and forms. Let's go back to the top here, and I want to hide the photo. I want to show the bio, and I want to show the close button. Okay, let's click rollover, double click, go to my CC libraries, give it that blue color, click on the donut or content grabber, go to properties, opacity, and soft light. Okay, you can leave it at 100%, opacity is fine. Click on normal, double click the name, and just delete the top name. You see, if I go over rollover, the name is still there. So meaning when we roll over these images, that blue color will appear as well as the name. So let's go back to normal. Okay, let's click Jorge Suarez and go to actions, show hide buttons and forms. Scroll back to the top in the visibility section here, and let's hide the photo for Jorge Suarez. And let's show his bio and show close button 3. Click on rollover, double click. It's important to double click so you're driven into that rollover appearance state. Now we can give it that blue color. Click on the content grabber, go to your opacity. In the blend mode, we want soft light. Perfect. Click on normal, and you can see that has been applied. In the normal appearance state, double click the name and just delete it. We got one more here. Lindsay Grant photo. This will have an action of show hide buttons and forms. Scroll back to the top. Let's hide the photo. Let's show the bio. And let's show close button 4. Good. Click on rollover, double click, go to CC libraries, or in your case, the swatches, give it that blue color, click on the donut or content grabber, and in the opacity, choose soft light and go back to normal. In the normal appearance, rollover, double click until you have that name selected and go ahead and remove that. All right, let's add the actions to the close buttons now. So I'm going to click on that first one, and that's close button 1. The action here, again, will be show hide buttons and forms. And in this case, I want to show Helena Grainstein photo, and I want to hide Helena Grainstein bio, and I also want to hide close button 1. Let's give this a rollover appearance. Double click to drive into that rollover appearance, and in my CC libraries, I'm going to choose this darker blue color, and you can see when I hover over it, it'll just go from that lighter blue to darker blue. Perfect. Let's move on to the second one. It's going to move in just a little bit here, just so we could see it better. So this will be show hide buttons and forms again, and in this case, I'm just going to scroll to the top, and in this case, we want Anthony Jones photo to show. We want Anthony Jones bio to be hidden and close button 2 to be hidden as well. I'm going to click on rollover, double click on that button and choose this darker blue and then just go back to normal. Let's click on the third close button and add an action of show hide buttons and forms. Scroll to the top. This will be show for Jorge Suarez photo, and we're gonna hide his bio and hide close button 3. Perfect, we have one more to do here. Actually, let's add the rollover appearance to that. So click rollover, double click to drive into that, give it that darker blue, and then just click back on normal. I'm gonna click on this last close button and give it an action of show hide buttons and forms. And let's scroll to the top. Lindsay Grant photo, we wanna show that. We wanna hide her bio, and we wanna hide the close button, the last one. Let's give it a rollover appearance, double click, and give it that darker blue and go back to normal. Perfect, I'm just gonna tuck this back away into the dock here, and let's see how this looks if I test it out. Actually, before I do, I want these 4 text frames to be behind our profile images. So go ahead and select all 4, and while holding your shift key, just drag them up and place them behind our images. Now I can click on any of my interactive panels to launch the EPUB preview window. Let's have a look. If I hover over them, you could see that the hover appearance that we set up works just fine. I'm gonna click Helena. There's her profile. I'm gonna close it, and it'll launch her or bring back her profile image. So let's do the same for Anthony. Close it. Jorge, close, and then Lindsay's the last one, and that works as well. So this is a cool way that you can set up a menu with profile images and info pieces to your digital publishing projects. So let's move on to the third and final tip. I have some content down below here, which I'm just gonna place on the page. This won't have any interactivity component to it. It's just there for placeholder purposes. Now, this last tip that I'm gonna show you is how to create a slider menu that will come in from the bottom of the page with open and close functionality. You can see down below here, I have a chevron up arrow, as well as that same close button that we used up top here. And so we'll use these 2 buttons to open and close this sidebar that I have on the pasteboard, and I'm just dragging onto the page now. Just place it on the page like so, and just make sure it's centered to the page. Perfect. Now, the first thing we want to do before we move any further is add a horizontal guide, and this will help us when we're setting up the custom motion path. To do that, just move your cursor up to the ruler up here and drag out a guide, a horizontal guide, in the center point of our sidebar here. Okay, so just the center of that is fine. Now what I can do is move this below the page. So the top of it is snapped to the bottom of the page. This will all make sense once we set up our animation and our custom motion path. Now let's move these icons to the front. So Shift Command and right square bracket, or you could just go to Object, Arrange, and bring to front. Okay, so they are in the front now, and that is because we want the buttons to sit on top of the sidebar. So I'm going to just do Command Z. Perfect. Now what I want to do is grab my line tool here, and I'm going to start drawing a line from the center point. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. Anywhere in this area is just fine. Hold your shift key when you're dragging the line and drag it to that guide that you just set up. Okay, the top of it. And it's important that you're dragging the line from the bottom up, because that is the path that the sidebar will travel on once we set up the animation. So we have the line selected. I'm going to click on the selection tool, hold my shift key and click the sidebar. Now this is all grouped, which is good. If it's not grouped, or if you're starting from scratch, just make sure that this is all grouped. That's very important too. Now I'm going to go to my animation panel. Let me just tear it off here. And down below, bottom right hand corner, right next to the little trash can icon, click this icon here. It's called, let me just move this up. It's called Convert to Motion Path. So go ahead and click that. Now that line that we created is now a motion path. And you could see you want to ensure that the top of it, so click that motion path, click it once, and then you just want to make sure that it is snapped to that guide. Okay, That's important too, because that is where the center of this sidebar will land. So if I just, let's play this and let me show you. I'll click play and it'll come in very slow, but that is the animation that we want. Now that's just coming in on page load. We're going to set it up where we can control it to open and close. I do want to speed it up because 1 second is just a little too slow. So I'm going to do 0.25. Okay, everything else is fine. Right now you can see the event says on page load. We're going to change that very shortly. Okay, let's focus in on these buttons now. So let's start with the arrow first. And the first thing we want to do is create that into a button. So let's go ahead and group these two panels together. And the type here will be button. And let's call this open slider button. Okay. And the action here will be animation. And you can see in the animation field, it says info slide. Now that's the only animation that we set up. So that's the one we want. And the option here is when I click that, it will play. All right. I want to click on rollover and let's give this a rollover appearance as well. So right now it's the light blue. Let's go ahead and give it the dark blue and click normal. So we have that nice rollover appearance just to stay consistent with the other buttons as well. Good. Let's click on the close button here. So let's convert that into a button and this will be called close slider button. Now the action here will also be animation, and animation is info slide. That's what I named the animation here. But the option, you can see it says play. Let's change that to reverse. So basically when I click that, the animation will reverse. In other words, it will close. So I'm gonna click rollover, double click, and let's make this white, okay? Because it'll be on that background, the darker blue, and it'll just look nicer and white. So we have the normal and the rollover here as well. Now I do want these to overlap, so let's just place them one over the other, and then let's center it to the page, just like that. Good. I'm gonna zoom out here, and actually one other thing I'd like to do here before I go any further is add a show hide buttons and forms. So the close button, actually, I'm clicked on the close slider button. Make sure that that is hidden until triggered, much like we did in tip 2 with the close buttons. We don't want that to appear until we trigger the actual open button and the animation will play. So I'm clicking on the open slider button now, and let's add an action of show hide buttons and forms. Now I'm going to scroll to the bottom here, and you can see those are our slider buttons. In this case, I want to hide the open slider when I click it, but I want to show the close slider. Let's do the opposite for the close slider button. I'm going to click on the actions plus icon here and choose show hide buttons and forms. And we want to show the open slider button, but hide the close slider button. Okay. So let's see how this looks. I'm going to zoom out, and you will notice one thing happen when I press play. I'm going to preview this, and you can see that it came in on page load. Okay, so we don't want that. We don't want that to happen on page load. So I'm going to close that for a sec. Let's click on this sidebar and go to animation, and in the events, you see here it says on page load and on release. So on release is basically the button interaction that we just set up. I don't want it to come in on page load. So go ahead and deselect on page load. Perfect. So if we test it out now, let's see how it looks. You can see it doesn't come in. I can hover over and it'll open. And there's my close button, and I can close to reverse. That's pretty cool. So let's test it out again. It'll open, and then I can close it. As a last step, let's publish this online and see how it looks in a web browser. So I'm going to click on this share button up top here, and let's choose publish online. That'll bring up this window where you can publish your work online. You can give your project a title. You can see mine as a default is just called template, and that's the name of the project itself. You can choose the range of pages. I'm just going to hit all, and then you would hit publish. I'm going to hit cancel because I've already went ahead and published mine. So let's test out what we have. I'm just going to put it in full screen here. So I have my universal scrolling frame. up top with the two panels. I have my profile image menu, which I can hover over and it activates that rollover appearance. But I can also click and close these buttons to bring up more information. That's using the show hide buttons and forms, which by the way, will also work. This step 2, this tip 2, will also work for PDF interactive. The other two will not, so just keep that in mind. And then the last tip here is just clicking that interactive sidebar, closing it, and you get that cool experience of opening and closing an animation, but it works as a interactive sidebar menu as well. I really hope you enjoyed learning these 3 useful interactive tips using Adobe InDesign. If you found this video helpful, leave a like or comment below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to get notified when new lessons are released. If you'd like to learn more about digital publishing using Adobe InDesign, check out this playlist right up here. Until next time, take care and keep creating.